Hi, I'm Kristen Llorca of Wild Wonder, and we're here for Finding Solid Ground with our guest, Amber Astronauta. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
So today I wanted to talk about, well, you're several things. You're a Reiki practitioner, you're an astrologer, you're a tarot reader and guide. Am I missing anything?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, good. And today I wanted to focus mostly on astrology, but I want to learn about all your other things. Um, I felt like I had a gateway drug into mystical world
Mhm.
in my probably early 30s,
Yeah.
and I want to know if there was what was like your gateway mystical practice that led down this road of Reiki and tarot and astrology.
Mm, Good question. I think that my gateway drug was probably Reiki, honestly. I was in a very stressful tech job for quite a few years and was really looking for a physical and sort of emotional practice that could ground me, bring me some peace outside of work. And I took a Reiki class, and I think that, I had dabbled in astrology and tarot, but taking that class and spending that time with myself um, sort of showed me that I could try anything I wanted. And like you said, it was a gateway. It was like, okay, well,
Nice.
if I can do this Reiki thing, I can do whatever I want. And just started spending a lot of time studying all three of those practices at
And
that
you're
point.
in Philadelphia now. Where is that? Where you found Reiki as well?
Yeah, yeah. So we have a couple of different schools here in the city, and I don't actually remember how I initially heard about it, but I think it was a friend of a friend thing, and I started to.
So you'd been dabbling in astrology, tarot, and then you heard Reiki, and something just like went off in your brain, and you're like, maybe I should try this Reiki thing.
Yeah, it was out of like desperate need, you know. Like I
So
just,
isn't it always?
yeah, it is. I was so stressed out, and Reiki led me to like my own, peace and balance. But astrology and tarot allowed me to connect with other people in
Hmm.
ways that I wasn't able to, like at work. So it was like this well-rounded kind of
Right.
endeavor. Yeah,
So it was a course that you went into in
there was a
Philadelphia.
purpose. Mhm.
Is Philadelphia? Would you consider it like into metaphysics and mystical practices?
Yeah, we definitely have a community here that supports Reiki, yoga, meditation, all kinds of metaphysical practices like that.
Oh, that's
There's
interesting
new
because
studios popping up all the time.
I wouldn't have necessarily connected the two in my mind, but I don't know much about Philadelphia. And here in Miami, I feel like there's a contrast. Like there's pockets
Mhm.
of of these kind of places like yoga and meditation and more of the woo stuff like out on the fringes. But I wouldn't say they were that open minded to all practices all the time in all areas.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
that's cool. What does now after? So you did Reiki, and then you kind of went back and forth into astrology and tarot, or did you focus on one and then the other? They kind of blended.
I think I started with tarot just because it was less intimidating to me. It was something where I could read a book, buy a deck, and just sort
Mm,
of dive in. And, at that time, this was a couple years ago, it got really trendy and really
right.
accessible. And my friends wanted nothing more than for me to practice on that.
Right.
And then I think astrology came next because they're just so interwoven.
Hmm.
Once I sort of felt comfortable with tarot, I could dive more into astrology from there.
I remember a friend of mine who's an energy healer, and anytime I'd talk about astrology, she'd be like, "Oh no, that's too much to memorize," and I was like,
It's a
"It's
lot.
a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot." Do you remember? So, well, I'd like you to explain to anybody that doesn't know what a natal chart is, and then I'll ask the question.
Sure. Yeah. So a natal chart is just a diagram, a representation of the sky from the time and location of your birth. So we just plug in your birth date, your birth time, and where you were born into, a website or app, a calculator essentially.
Much easier than olden times.
Yeah, they would literally draw it by hand. Yeah, crazy. We just get these websites to spit it out for us.
Hmm.
Um, and it literally shows the signs, the planets, and various other layers of information about the sky at that moment.
Okay, so now that everybody's caught up, I'd like to ask, do you remember the first time you pulled your own natal chart?
I think I mean, not crystal clear.
Not like the exact date, but do you remember around?
I remember plugging it into an app and being like, what? You know? And honestly, before that, you know, I would just look at my horoscope and back to Cosmic Mag or whatever.
Right.
So I had some familiarity with my sun sign, but yeah, I remember pulling out my chart and being very overwhelmed and confused. But then you can just refer to the website interpretations to get started. Right? Yeah.
Was it when you pulled your natal chart? I felt like for me there was like certain aspects I was like, oh, that's why. You know, that's why I do that thing. Was there like a specific point that you were like, oh, that makes so much sense now?
Oh my God. One of my favorite things about my chart. So I have a lot of activity in Leo in the 4th house. I'm a Pisces, so I don't really connect personally to Leo that much.
And they're opposites, correct?
Ish, yeah.
Ish.
I see all of this stuff going on in Leo. Well, my mother and my husband are Leos. And in the 4th house, that's about home and family.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, I've never connected to Leo energy, but my family.
You're surrounding
the one I come from and the one I've created for myself are just for Leo. And there it is in my chart. That's cool.
I think for me, when I first looked at it, I had a really difficult time with personal relationships growing up, like with, you know, boyfriends and friendships and things like that. I was like, what on earth? And I think my like big breakthrough moment was looking at Venus. And so I have a Venus in Pisces.
Oh,
which I was like, oh, that's so tough. Damn, why? Like, why? Which means, you know, I mean, explain what Venus, you're the expert, so you'll explain what Venus in Pisces is, but I felt like it explains so much about how I behaved in relationships and how I kind of brought on this karma because of how relationships trigger me in certain ways.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just swoon when I hear Venus in Pisces because it's such a beautiful, compassionate, just undying love type of energy.
Yeah.
But I can see how it would make it difficult to draw boundaries, to assert yourself, to feel empowered in love and in the act of giving and receiving of yourself.
Right. That was a big thing for me. Like, I'm still understanding it, but to be able to be like, oh, that's why I'm like, you know, I'm the like die on the pile for love, you know, like type of person, you know, like to a degree. I'll like climb the highest mountain, like, you know, write poetry. And it's really, the artistry is great about Venus and Pisces, right? Like the ability to write poetry from pain. Or like I spent many years as a dancer to be able to create in that way from different, very complicated relationships. But then when you take that into like the physical world, it's a whole different animal, right?
Totally. And I think the invitation of anything in your chart is just like what you said, like, oh, okay, that's maybe why I am or why I've had these experiences. But then to say, what is the strength in that? What's the invitation here? I mean, undying compassion and a capacity for love is not a bad thing.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing, right? The ability to create art out of pain. Oh my God, like what else are we here to do? You know? But then saying, you know, how can I use that for my highest good? How can I use that to actually create healthy relationships that serve the greater, you know, good?
Right, because I think the dark side of that, and there's always, I think, a light side and a dark side of every sign and every placement. The dark sign is always like martyrdom, right? You could be like divine love or martyrdom. And so that's the balance. And I think that's what's really cool about astrology, that it didn't only teach me about me, it taught me about my relationships and how, not only how other people see me, but how I interpret other people because of this construct.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, the energy you project, the kinds of energies that you attract back to you, and your own perception of what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So if so I always am interested when you meet somebody, and I don't know if you do this too, I want to know their like trifecta, their sun, moon, and rising. Sure. Do you do that too?
Oh yeah, it's a great place to start. Are you asking me for mine?
No, I'd like to know yours.
Yeah, so my sun is in Pisces, so I get that. My moon is in Capricorn, and I am Gemini rising.
Gemini rising. I'm Aries sun, Virgo moon, Cancer rising.
Oh, so beautiful. I love that.
I'd like to know, we both have Earth moons, correct?
Yeah.
So I felt like understanding also the rising sign was another big breakthrough of learning for me, because I always felt that I thought I was coming across one way, or like very authentically, and people interpreted it in a totally different way, so that they would later, like close friendships and relationships, would then find out how I really am.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks a lot to the rising sign, that like that mask that people see when you're, is that how you explain a rising sign? A mask that people see as you're going through the world?
Yeah, I think that I like to think of it more as like the energetic field. You know, in astrology, we recognize that what's going on the inside isn't always necessarily what's going on the outside, and that's okay. It's not like you're trying to fool people, or you're being phony behind the mask. It's more just like there are two different landscapes that we're trying to integrate here, and that is real and fun. So yes, sometimes you'll recognize people are picking up my rising sign energy, but inside I feel much more connected to my sun or my moon. Yeah.
Right. So do you think you come across as a Gemini to other people, like very chatty, very communicative, and maybe your interior is more grounded, more reserved?
I think that I come across as Gemini rising, and I think that part of that is just I teach, you know, so I talk to people, particularly on the internet these days, all the time. And I think I do come across a little verbose sometimes, you know. I definitely like to appear very social and connected and lighthearted, but yes, I think there's the other side of Gemini, which is also a little shy or awkward. It's like you need that virgin time to kind of feel grounded. And yeah, I think inside, I don't know if I feel grounded inside. The Capricorn moon shows up, I think, more as like worry and a concern for structure and guidelines. Things like that.
I could connect with that as a Virgo moon. Like, I think I come across as very easygoing, like very Cancer, like mother-like energy, and like anything goes and everything's fine. But if you look at my like notes or my house, everything's very much in its place. Everything's minimal. Like there's not a lot of clutter. I'm overwhelmed with sound. You know, like it's very quiet in my house.
Oh my God, I'm so sensitive to sound. That's funny. Do you think that over your life you have evolved from your sun into your rising, or from your rising into your sun?
I think I've evolved from my sun into a combination between my moon and my rising.
Wow. I think it's different for everybody. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, so I'm an Aries sun, and I feel like I was born wild as can be. Like there was no boundaries. There was just like, I just wanted to experience everything. You know, that Aries movement of like constantly creating, constantly moving. And then I want to say like 30s, I started to become very structured, like very much like I like to be in my home. I like my things very simple. I like to do like, I could spend a whole day reading or writing or whatever. I could not see a soul and that'd be fine. You know? And, but I actually spoke to a friend recently, and she said, actually, I always thought of you as Wendy with the Lost Boys when we were in school. And I was like, really? Because in my mind, I thought I was this like wild, like soul that was constantly creating. But she's like, no, and it was mostly, which is weird, which is a whole nother conversation. It was mostly men who didn't have either moms at home, not men, boys at the time, that didn't have moms at home or sisters or a feminine energy. I would kind of take care of them. So, and that's that whole Cancer rising thing that's always kind of there. So going back before people get so confused listening, in case someone doesn't know what a sun, a moon, and a rising is, can you give like a short breakdown of what that is?
Yeah. So your sun sign, that's the sign you grow up saying, like, I'm a Pisces. When you say that, what you're saying is, when I was born, if you looked up, the sky would be within the constellation of Pisces. Same goes for the moon. That day, the moon was within a particular sign. The rising sign, on the other hand, is the horizon. So if wherever you were, if you looked to the east, the horizon line, whatever sign was rising up, was coming up that day, at that moment, is your rising.
Okay. And and then can you give the breakdown of archetypally, what does that mean for a person?
Sure, yeah. So your sun is more like it's like your solar plexus. It's that purpose. It's that inner confidence. It's that fire in your belly that we're all born with, right? It's the energy that allows you to breathe your first breath, get up in the morning. It's really like that, like I said, internal purpose, that thing that allows you to move through the world. Your moon is your emotions, your intuition, your connection to your inner wisdom, dreams, imagination, this internal landscape that really only you have access to unless you communicate it out. And even then, it's always a filter, right?
Yeah.
And your rising sign is, like I said, that energetic field, that energy that you are expressing outwardly, either intentionally or unintentionally, that people are reading when they first sort of encounter you.
Okay, that makes sense. So if a person was going to you for their first initial reading, what usually are they looking for when like it's just a general, like when a person first comes to astrology and asks you for a session, what is it that they're usually looking for?
It usually goes one of two ways. Some people are like, I don't know what this is or even where to start. Can you just tell me what you see? And so I will spend some time with their chart, look at what the main sort of messages are that are coming through from me, and then just offer that up. And oftentimes, a discussion will go from there. Some people are very specific. Everyone wants to know about love, family, work, and essentially if they're on the right path in life.
Right.
And I can look to their chart, specific bits and pieces, to look for clarity around those topics.
Do you find that the challenge is, I think people are usually looking for you to tell them about love, at least like when I work in tarot and stuff like that, it's like, no, but tell me when the one is coming, right?
Oh my God, yes.
So you're like, well, so what's the difficulty in that? What is something that's most misunderstood about astrology when somebody comes to you?
Yeah, I think exactly that. So obviously in the early days of astrology and for hundreds of years, people would predict the future and create timelines for when events would or would not take place in someone else's life according to their chart. In modern times, and my personal approach is less about predicting the future and it's more about saying, who are you right now? Where are you at? And what kind of energies do you want to welcome into your life? What kind of energies do you want to release from your body, mind, and soul? And how can you make yourself more open to what you want? And so we look to the chart, say about the question like, when will I meet the love of my life?
Yeah.
I would redirect that question and I'd say, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But why aren't you the love of your life?
Right.
What's missing? What kind of habits, actions, attitudes can you foster within yourself and within your environment that make you your best partner and also, open to attracting the kind of love that you want and need in your life?
And that's not always the answer they want.
No. Let's work on you, and I don't know when it's going to work is not the answer.
Yes, not what they want. But
teaching that and helping people work through that is part of the job.
Right. But I think that's the most empowering thing about these practices is that it redirects the responsibility to you. I mean, it takes a lot as a person to be able to accept that responsibility.
Yes. But I think that's what spiritual evolution is.
Right.
Empowering yourself and recognizing it's your thing that you can control. So you do your best.
Right. But I think that's what people have most difficulty with. They're like, I don't want to do anything. I want you to fix them.
Yes. I'm paying you to tell me what's going to happen or how someone else is going to act and when they're going to do that thing. It's like, that's not how this works.
No, it doesn't.
But yeah, I love though that conversation, and it always gets to a point where the person feels a shift. And I think they do leave feeling perhaps a little frustrated, but empowered and understanding that, they have agency in their life.
But I imagine you also see the person that just refuses to accept the responsibility as well.
Yeah, occasionally, and that's okay,
Yeah.
because if my approach and my astrology aren't the right fit for them, they can find someone who has, a different skill set or a different approach, and hopefully get the kind of answers and clarity they want.
Right. That's fair. So we're obviously in a very, I don't want to say challenging. It's different. It's shifting this time. How do you think that astrology can help us now, or an astrological practice?
Yeah, I think astrologically speaking, we are in a very challenging time. I think it's fair to say that. Right now, in the sky, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto are all in sign of Capricorn. These giant planets that have very long-lasting effects are essentially digging up our root system. They're shaking our foundation. As above, so below. We are seeing this happen. We are seeing global shift in terms of all of our structures, which is what Capricorn is really about. So government, healthcare, food, education, every single aspect of our sort of global systems are being up for review, revised, and it's hard. It's really not a fun process. It's difficult. But what astrology reminds us is that, this is all a moment in time. These planets keep going in their orbit. They're not going to stay here and continue to rattle things. The whole point is to, shake the snow globe, and then they move on and they let the glitter settle, And so I think looking up and saying, what's happening up there? How can I relate that to what's going on here on Earth? How can I make sense of that? Oh, this is a necessary part of our evolution as a species, and it will pass.
Right. I think it will pass is a big lesson in not only astrology but tarot too. It's like, this is just what's happening right now. And I think even though these practices have been marketed over eons to be like future telling devices, it really does bring us back to like, no, what's happening here and now, and what's happening within us here and now in the greater world, or this greater world pattern, which I feel, like you said, the macrocosm and the microcosm, right? I also feel that as individuals, at least it's true for me, that this is all going on outside, and then in my personal life, a mirror image of what's happening out there has been happening in here. And I think without the practices or the tools that I have, it might feel like everything is happening out there, and it's causing chaos in my life. But to step into that responsibility and empowerment and be like, oh, this is for my greater good and the greater good of all. And it's shitty. It's not fun.
It's crazy.
But
I love that you mentioned that it's also going on inside, because you're absolutely right. I mean, we see what's happening in the sky, on the earth as a whole, and then in ourselves personally, all kind of reflected and going through the same process. And it's both. It's that A, this will pass, but also B, it is for our greater good. When each of us put in the work, we put in the work globally, we do see, progress. So.
Because I also think we all love to say like, oh, it was so awesome before this all happened. Right. But I like to propose the question. I know the question was like, was it like really awesome? And was it awesome for everybody,
Right. Astrology tells us, it was some things about the past, March.
Right.
Were awesome. Some things apparently were being shown. Some things at the very foundation of all of that were not working any longer. And so we have to, compromise and say that some of what we liked about the past is going to have to shift so that we can actually create a foundation that is supportive and inclusive for all people. Right. And then we can get the awesome back on top of that. And that is long-term sustainable growth, not, the tower card.
Right.
With this false idea of security.
Right.
And
that's a very Capricorn theme, I feel, correct?
Yes.
That idea of long-term, planning and shifting.
Yeah,
for longevity, right?
yes, the whole point of Capricorn is like, let's build a world that works for everyone and that is truly supportive, compassionate, and secure. And Pluto there right now, this is the only time Pluto will be in Capricorn in our lifetime. Pluto's like, yeah, this is the moment. You have to do that restructuring.
So what happens, I don't want to be all gloom and doom, but what happens if someone refuses the call to change, to shift?
In their own personal life?
In their own personal life.
I think that, I don't know. That is their personal journey. And I honestly think that if, they personally intuitively feel like there are some major changes I need to make in my life in order to create a healthy and more sustainable future for myself, and they decide to, ignore that, I think that they will just suffer the consequences spiritually. The world is going to go on,
right?
Regardless if you're on board.
Right.
So I think you're inviting more struggle for yourself.
Right, because I see that on the larger scale. I feel like some of the population is like, okay, let's change, let's move forward, let's fight the good fight. And then there's some of the population that's like, no, let's dig our heels and we're just going to be here. And if we can't be here, then we're going back there, but we're certainly not going over there.
Right. I know. It's like, I think about nature, and it's like ecosystems are in a constant state of flux, right? Growth, death, regrowth, growth, death, regrowth, every seasons. Forests, we see this modeled for us everywhere. And as humans, I think that, if we try to dig our heels in and say, like, I'm not going to allow these leaves to fall, or I'm not going to allow myself to, hibernate this winter. Well, I don't think that you have a choice, in the bigger picture. And if you do just sort of deny, I think you're going to find out in the spring that you would have really actually benefited from that process.
Right. It kind of reminds me of like a Saturn return, like almost a global Saturn return.
Oh my God,
so before we go, I want you to explain for anyone that doesn't know what a Saturn return is.
Sure. So any kind of return, a Saturn return specifically, is when the planet returns to the same place in the sky that it was when you were born. So Saturn takes 29 and a half years to go all the way around the sun. So when you were born, if Saturn was in Capricorn, when you turn 29, 40, it'll be in Capricorn again. And in astrology, the significance of this moment is around exactly these themes, restructuring. You look back on your life and you say, what kind of structures was I given? What kind of morals and values did my parents pass on to me? What kind of education did I receive? What kind of spiritual or religious upbringing was I influenced by? And now, as a grown-up, as an independent adult with agency, which pieces of that are important for me? Which pieces of that align with my own values? And do I want to keep and move forward in my life with? And which pieces are really not feeling are really not aligned for me that I can let go of and spend the next, chapter of my life sort of filling in gaps with things that are more aligned for me.
So I almost feel that a Saturn return and the moment we're living in right now is kind of the same invitation.
Yes.
And
the U.S. is actually in its Pluto return.
Oh, right.
So very similar things, yeah.
So I was thinking, like, I always think, like, if somebody had let me know that it was my Saturn return, I might have made better choices. Yes. But my Saturn return felt like, a tower moment where everything, like, the rug got swept out from under me, like, everything shattered. And because I wasn't presented with it as a choice, I kind of did dig my heels, like, no, this can't happen. I'm going to continue living how I want to live, and this is how it's going to be. So it felt like I almost had two, until I learned the lesson.
Yes, that's amazing. Yeah, if you are in your mid-20s, let's talk about your Saturn return.
Yeah.
It's coming, and I would love to prepare you. Yeah, my Saturn return, I didn't really know about the concept either. And it definitely hit me over the head like a bolt of lightning. And I think that things definitely went up from there, but I did not know what was happening to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all of a sudden you got like shaken up from a dream and realize it's a nightmare. And then you have to kind of put all the pieces together without knowing why any of it is happening if you don't know that this is the Saturn return and you're being invited or initiated into a new era of your life.
Yes.
I feel like we should all be given like the astrology handbook, like in school. I mean, like
I know, and that particular one, Saturn return is just like the biggest. I think one of the most important of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah, so if somebody is completely new to the world of astrology, they could obviously call you. Or, but what would you suggest that they do if they're curious about this world? They want to use it as a tool for spiritual evolution. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think that it can seem very overwhelming. All the planets, all the signs, all the books out there, all the websites. I think the best thing to do is just pick a lane. I think you can pick one thing that just piques your interest. The moon is a great gateway drug into astrology because it has a very clear, energy, something that we can all deeply relate to. The moon changes signs every 2 or 3 days. It's not like every day you have to go into some deep kind of study. And what you can do is just say, what sign is the moon in today? What is the energy of that sign? Google it,
Right.
How do I relate to that energy? And how can I sort of tend to that in me today? Simple. There's also a book that I love called Astrology for Yourself by Demetra George. A really fun, really easy workbook for understanding your birth chart. I recommend that to all my students.
Say it again, just so
It's called Astrology for Yourself by Demetra George.
Oh, Demetra George. Yeah, I think it's funny that you said the moon as a gateway drug, because the reason I fell into astrology was because I practiced a very traditional form of yoga. And so we didn't practice on the full moon or the new moon. And it was always like, but why? And it was always these like obscure answers, like, because women get their periods on the new moon or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but if I don't have my period, I can't practice. Why can't I practice? Yeah. And so then that's when I started following the moon. So yeah, I think the moon is a great, and it also tells us a lot about our interior lives.
Which is where we ought to be starting.
Yeah. With ourselves. So that's awesome. Well, I think we covered a lot, and I would love for everyone to know what you have coming up and what are you offering?
Thank you. So I do offer private readings, astrology and tarot, and Reiki sessions. So I'm always available to do one-on-one remotely over the internet. But I also teach group classes, which I love. So if you're interested in learning more about your chart, your cards, and sort of practicing in community, I do online workshops. So the next monthly Astro Circle, which is my low-key sort of discussion-based astrology workshop, is coming up on August 26th at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll be talking all about Virgo season. So if you are a Virgo, this will be a fun birthday.
Or a Virgo moon.
Moment for you, or a Virgo moon, absolutely. If you don't know about Virgo, you will discover exactly where it shows up in your chart and learn a new way to work with that energy.
I love that. I love Virgo season, not just because of the Virgo moon thing, but like the whole back to school idea works so perfectly with like the whole Virgo energy.
Yes. It's like, let's get things in order.
Right. Let's set it up, but that's awesome. I hope everyone will join Amber in her next Astro Circle, and I'll send links out with all your information. I thank you so much for joining me and for sharing with us. This was great.
Kristen, this was really fun, and I love talking about this stuff, so anytime.
Thank you. We'll do it again for sure.
Okay.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.